She didn't look up when I came home. Melissa was on the couch, feet under a blanket, phone glued in her hand like it was the only living thing in the room. The blue light painted her face in shadows I didn't recognize anymore. "Let's grab dinner at Murphy's," I offered, dropping my keys in the ceramic bowl we'd picked out together 3 years ago, back when we still picked things out together. "Wings? That salad you like? Maybe catch the game." "Not tonight," she answered without lifting her head. Her thumb moved in practice swipes across the screen. "It's Friday. I'm busy." Another swipe. "Go without me." I leaned against the doorway, studying the woman who used to turn toward the sound of my voice. "We live together, remember?" "Drew, I'm tired. I had a long day. Don't start." If I'd known where it was headed, I would have saved myself a dozen small speeches and moved straight to the new rules. But hope makes fools of us all, and I still believed in salvage jobs back then. That night, I scrambled eggs for 2 and ate alone at the kitchen island while she scrolled, laughed at something only her phone knew, and disappeared to take a bath. The bath lasted an hour. The silence lasted longer. We'd been married 8 years. 8 years of building something that felt solid under our feet. No kids yet. We'd always said we had time for that later, after the house was paid down more, after careers settled. Just a $280K mortgage on our place in suburban Denver, and 2 careers that used to feel like they were building toward the same blueprint. Melissa worked marketing at Patterson and Associates downtown, one of those firms where everyone was always dropping balls and she was always fixing it. Me, I ran job sites for Henderson Construction, the kind of work where problems get solved with your hands and a level, not endless meetings about meetings. The next morning, I brought her coffee in the blue mug she'd claimed as hers, back when we still shared small rituals. The good beans I grind on weekends, the ones that cost twice what they should, but make the house smell like a promise. She didn't touch it. "Too strong," she said, not looking up from her phone. That became our chorus. Too strong, too late, too busy, too tired. 2 days later, I tried again. "We haven't gone out in a while. There's a new place over on Broad Street, Italian. You mentioned wanting to try it." "I've got a lot this week," she replied, thumbs moving in their familiar dance. "Work's a mess. Everyone's losing their minds over the Morrison account." Then Saturday morning, she tucked hair behind her ear in that way that used to mean she was working up to something good. "I'll be with Zoe today. We need a sister day." I could have argued. Could have asked what exactly Sister Day had to do with the last 6 weekends of sudden plans that didn't include me. Could have pointed out that Zoe lived 20 minutes away and they'd been having plenty of sister days lately. But I played it straight, the way you do when you're still trying to be the reasonable one. "Okay. Rain check then." "Sure." No smile. Back to the screen. Back to whatever world lived in that rectangle that mattered more than the one we'd built together. This wasn't a rough patch. We'd had those before, the kind that come with explanations and eye contact and eventual makeup sessions that reminded you why you'd chosen each other. This came with secrecy and a firewall made of glass, transparent enough to see through, strong enough to keep you out. When she talked at all, it was about chaos at the office. Everyone's dropping balls left and right. If I don't stay on top of things, the whole Morrison campaign falls apart. I asked for specifics, offered to help her update her resume if she wanted to look elsewhere. That triggered a stiff little laugh. "You don't understand my field, Drew," she said, closing the door to our office like I was noise from the street. I kept up the small courtesies because that's what you do when you're trying to save something. Breakfast ready when she came downstairs, a note on the counter with the weather forecast, and a reminder about dinner plans she'd inevitably cancel. I booked a movie one night, that action thing she'd mentioned wanting to see. She texted from the driveway. "Running late, don't wait up." The ticket went to waste, and I ate the popcorn alone in the car like a teenager after a bad breakup. 6 weeks of this. 6 weeks of living with a polite stranger who happened to share my mortgage payment and sleep in the bed we'd picked out together. 6 weeks of cold shoulder that felt colder every day, until I woke up one morning and realized I'd stopped being the man who begged for scraps of attention. That's when I started measuring the structure before making any cuts. I moved my gym bag out of our shared closet and into the guest room, stopped coordinating the dinners I cooked with her increasingly late arrivals, put a whiteboard calendar in the kitchen and wrote my schedule big and clear, job sites, meetings, one card game with Hudson from the crew. One Saturday I'd spend at the garage helping Walt with whatever project had him swearing at inanimate objects this week. No discussion, just new facts. "What's that?" she asked one evening, glancing at the board like it was written in a foreign language. "My calendar. That way I don't cancel plans for ones that don't happen." "Drew, that's dramatic." "No, that's boundaries, soft ones." She studied me, like I'd started speaking something she couldn't translate. "Do what you want." "I will." But she kept drifting further from shore, and I kept my tone even and my eyes open, started paying attention to the small details you miss when you're busy making excuses for someone. The way she checked her phone first thing in the morning, before coffee, before acknowledging I existed, the new passwords on devices that used to be open territory, the careful way she kept her screen, angled away from me, like she was protecting state secrets instead of planning her next grocery run. 2 weeks after I put up the calendar, she came home just before sunrise. I was at the kitchen counter, laptop open, reviewing blueprints for the Riverside project. Dawn was creeping through the windows, and I had coffee brewing because site meetings start early, and buildings don't construct themselves. The front door clicked, and the air in the room changed. There was a smell on her cardigan that didn't live in our house. Something sharp and unfamiliar, like aftershave that wasn't mine, mixed with the stale air of places I'd never been. "Long night," I said, closing the laptop without looking up. "Keep it casual, keep it normal." Let her hang herself with her own rope. "Emergency at work." She hung the cardigan on the back of the kitchen chair, still wouldn't meet my eyes. The Morrison presentation fell apart. Had to pull an all-nighter with the team. Must have been some emergency. I took a sip of coffee, watched her over the rim of the mug. "Smells like a different kind of crisis. Who dropped you off?" Her hand froze on the cardigan, just for a second, but I caught it. "A colleague. Cameron offered to give me a ride since my car's making that noise again." Cameron. I knew Cameron, Zoe's husband, family barbecues, holiday dinners, the guy who complained about traffic like it was a personal enemy and always brought craft beer nobody wanted to drink. That Cameron. "Cameron from Patterson and Associates?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Cameron from accounting, yes. He was working late too." She walked past me toward the stairs. "I'm taking a shower." I let the water run upstairs and let the answer soak in. There was a time when I'd have pressed harder, asked follow-up questions, maybe raised my voice and demanded explanations. But I'm not that version of myself anymore. Pressure makes some people honest. Pressure makes others creative. I didn't need creativity. I needed proof. That week, I moved $15K of our joint savings into a separate account in my name and printed the ledger. Not enough to hurt our day-to-day operations, but enough to cover a lawyer and a deposit on my own place if things went the way I suspected they were heading. I put a lock on the office door, changed the password on my laptop. Small preparations like setting rebar before you pour concrete, foundation work. I also started paying closer attention to patterns. Melissa's late nights increased from once a week to 3 times. Her phone went from being casually protected to practically classified. She started dressing differently for work. Makeup on days she'd never bothered before. Clothes that looked like she was going somewhere more important than Patterson and Associates. On Tuesday, she dressed like she was attending an awards ceremony. Full makeup, heels that clicked against our hardwood floors like a countdown timer, and a blouse I'd only seen her wear to weddings and company Christmas parties. "Nice outfit," I said, buttering toast at the counter. "Big presentation today?" "Late meeting with a nightmare client," she replied, not looking at me in the reflection of the hallway mirror where she was checking her lipstick. "Could run until midnight." I nodded, finished my toast, and watched her drive away in her Honda Civic. Then I got in my truck and followed, keeping 2 cars between us like I was tailing a suspect instead of my own wife. She didn't go to Patterson and Associates. She didn't even head toward downtown Denver. Instead, she drove across town to Maple Street, a residential area where none of our friends lived and she had no business being. She parked under a maple tree that was dropping yellow leaves onto her windshield like confetti at a funeral. I eased my truck to a stop half a block away and killed the engine. A man stepped out from the shadow of a blue pickup truck. He kept his baseball cap pulled low, face turned away from the streetlight like he knew he was being watched. But when Melissa crossed to him with that quick, nervous smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months, he lifted his head just enough for me to see his profile. Cameron, Zoe's husband, the craft beer guy, the traffic complainer, my sister-in-law's husband, meeting my wife in a neighborhood where neither of them had any business being. They didn't kiss, didn't embrace, just stood close enough to share secrets and spoke in the urgent, hushed tones of people who knew they were doing something wrong. After 10 minutes, they got in his truck and drove away. I didn't follow, didn't make a scene, just sat there in my truck, engine cooling, and recorded the date, time, and location in the Notes app on my phone. Evidence, not emotion. Facts, not feelings. The next night, I stayed home, made dinner, watched the game, went to bed at a reasonable hour. Let her think the coast was clear, but the night after that, I followed again. Different park this time. Same nervous energy. Same 10-minute conversation before they drove off together, toward the part of town where the motels line Highway 36 like broken teeth. Over the next 3 weeks, I documented 12 separate meetings, always after 8 p.m., always in different locations for the initial meetup, always ending at that same motel off exit 17 with the flickering neon sign I used to joke about when we drove past it on our way to visit her parents. My jokes didn't seem funny anymore. I shot one short video clip that showed both their faces clearly, plus the timestamp and location data. Nothing anyone could misinterpret, but everything a divorce lawyer would need. Cameron worked at Patterson and Associates too, different department from Melissa, but same building, same company. I looked up their employee handbook online. Relationships between married employees were strictly prohibited, especially extramarital ones. HR would have a field day with this information. Back home each night, Melissa would spin elaborate stories about software rollouts and client emergencies and team meetings that ran until dawn. I'd nod and cut limes for the gin and tonics she'd started requesting instead of wine, and we'd perform our domestic choreography like actors who'd forgotten we were supposed to be playing a love story. I didn't confront her, didn't demand explanations or throw evidence in her face like some jealous husband in a daytime drama. Instead, I started making lists, assets and debts, joint accounts and individual responsibilities. Who owned what? Who owed what? Who had rights to what piece of the life we'd built together? I called my buddy Jackson, who'd been through this same dance 3 years ago. Asked him for the name of his lawyer, but casual-like, over beers at Murphy's while we watched the Broncos lose to Kansas City. "You thinking about pulling the ripcord?" he asked, not looking away from the TV. "Just getting my ducks in a row," I replied, in case the foundation's not as solid as I thought. He nodded like he understood the language of men who'd learned to plan for the worst, while hoping for something better. The next week, Melissa tried what I came to think of as illusion number 1. She brought me breakfast in bed on a Sunday morning, pancakes with fresh berries, real maple syrup, the whole domestic goddess routine. Melissa hadn't cooked pancakes since we bought the house, said the cleanup wasn't worth the effort. Now here she was, playing Betty Crocker like she was auditioning for a role she'd already lost. "This is out of character," I said, folding the cloth napkin she'd included, like this was some bed and breakfast instead of our bedroom. "I've been distant lately," she replied, perching on the edge of the mattress, but not quite facing me. "Work has been brutal, and you didn't deserve to carry that weight. I know I've been difficult. I appreciate the breakfast. We should do something this week, just the two of us. You pick the night, and I'll make sure nothing interferes." She picked Wednesday for our reconciliation dinner, then canceled Tuesday night to free up space for us, and again Thursday morning via text, because the client moved the timeline. Wednesday came and went like most Wednesdays. Her home late, shower, laptop, bed. When I didn't bring up her broken promise, she looked genuinely confused, like she couldn't understand why I wasn't grateful for the opportunity to be disappointed again. I poured myself coffee and wrote emails to subcontractors. My new policy. No reminders to adults about their own commitments. Things escalated the following Friday when she invited Zoe over for what she called sister bonding time. That wasn't unusual. They'd always been close, especially since Zoe moved back to Denver after her divorce from her first husband. What felt different was the energy they brought into our kitchen, like they were planning something that required my absence. They chopped vegetables for some, elaborate salad, giggling like middle schoolers sharing secrets, trading looks over my head whenever I moved through the room. Every time I entered their space, their voices would drop to whispers, then resume normal volume when I left. "You two plotting something?" I asked, rinsing a cutting board at the sink. "Just catching up," Zoe said, her voice a little too bright. Girl talk, nothing you'd be interested in. Melissa smirked. We're fine, Drew. Don't be paranoid. Good to know, I said, drying the board. I'm heading to Walt's garage tonight. He needs help with a timing belt, and I could use the distraction. Since when do you need to announce your plans? Zoe asked, like I'd missed some cue to ask permission. Don't you usually just go where you want? Since I stopped waiting around for other people's schedules to make sense. Zoe rolled her eyes in that way that reminded me why her first marriage hadn't worked out. Wow, someone's really committed to this independence thing. I didn't take the bait. Just grabbed my jacket and headed to Walt's shop, where the problems were mechanical and the solutions involved tools instead of psychology. 2 days before my birthday, my mom called to ask if I wanted a party. Nothing big, I told her. Just a few people. Grill some burgers, have some cake. Keep it simple. When I mentioned it to Melissa, she jumped on the idea like it was a life preserver. I'll handle everything, she said, pulling a legal pad from the kitchen drawer with more enthusiasm than she'd shown for anything in months. Menu, decorations, guest list. You don't have to worry about a thing. Not really my style to worry about parties. Drew, I'm serious. This is important. Let me do this for you, for us. She put on music while she planned. Old songs we used to dance to in the kitchen when we were still figuring out how to be married. For about an hour, humming around our kitchen with her lists and her energy, she almost looked like the woman I'd fallen in love with. It almost worked. Then my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the security camera we'd installed above the driveway after the break-ins last spring. The notification showed Melissa loading a stack of boxes into her trunk on Tuesday afternoon, while I was at the Riverside site. Not party supplies, clothes, personal items, my old leather toolbox that she had no reason to be touching. I didn't say anything, just walked to my office, took the small external hard drive from the safe, and copied all my documentation into a clean folder labeled Evidence. Photos, videos, dates, times, locations. 4 months of systematic betrayal, organized chronologically like a construction timeline. I made a second copy and locked it in the glove box of my truck. Experience had taught me that when you finally set a boundary, people get creative about testing it. The day of the party, I came home from work to find our backyard transformed. String lights hung between the trees, tables covered with checkered cloths, the smell of charcoal and lighter fluid, promising an evening that looked normal from the outside. Friends from Henderson Construction showed up first. Hudson and his wife Kelly, bringing their easy laughter and stories about job sites where things actually got built instead of torn down. Walt arrived with grease still under his fingernails and a 12-pack of beer that would actually get consumed, unlike Cameron's craft selections. My boss Jerome came with his wife Patricia, shook my hand, and told me I was ready for the Westfield contract and whatever came after it. You've been solid this year, he said. Reliable. That matters more than people think. Mrs. Patterson from next door brought her legendary potato salad and told me I looked clearer through the eyes, which I think was her diplomatic way of saying I'd finally started sleeping again. Zoe arrived fashionably late, breathless and alone, making a big show of checking her phone. Where's Cameron? I asked, because that's what you do when someone's spouse doesn't show to a family gathering. Oh, he's running errands, she said, waving her hand dismissively. You know how he is with his projects, always something that can't wait. Then she laughed, but it had sharp edges, like glass breaking in another room. Melissa hovered near her sister, smiling too hard, performing the role of devoted wife with the same energy she'd put into making pancakes. When people asked how we were doing, she answered for both of us. We're great, busy, you know how it is. Work's been crazy, but we're managing. Drew's been so supportive. Each lie delivered with practiced ease while she squeezed my shoulder like we were still a team. I nodded like a polite stranger and let her tell our story her way. For now. In the center of our dining room table sat a gift wrapped in white paper with an elaborate white ribbon, positioned like it needed its own spotlight. Every time someone added their present to the collection, Melissa would carefully rearrange things to keep hers front and center. She'd chosen my birthday deliberately. I could see it now, the calculated cruelty of the timing. Not just any day for her grand announcement, but the one day a year that was supposed to be about celebration and gratitude. She wanted to make sure I'd never be able to have another birthday without remembering this moment. We ate on the deck while the sun settled behind the mountains, casting everything in that golden light that makes Denver feel like a postcard. The conversation flowed easy. work stories, sports arguments, the kind of comfortable noise that happens when people actually like each other. Melissa played her part perfectly, refilling drinks, laughing at Walt's stories about impossible customers, standing close enough to me that anyone watching would think we were still solid. When Hudson raised his beer and suggested a toast, I kept it simple. Thanks for coming. I'm not much for speeches. I appreciate people who show up when it counts. Eat more food before Walt finishes it all. Laughter around the table. Melissa squeezed my shoulder, her fingers digging in just a little too hard. Gifts now? She suggested, her voice pitched higher than normal. Drew loves opening presents. Sure, I said, because what else do you say when someone's setting up your execution? People handed over honest gifts. Hudson gave me a set of precision screwdrivers I'd actually use. Walt brought a book about engine restoration that he'd probably read first. Jerome's wife, Patricia, had found a gift card to Murphy's with a note that said, "For the wings and the peace." Small kindnesses from people who knew me well enough to get it right. Then Melissa lifted the white ribbon box like she was presenting evidence in court. "From me," she said, pressing it into my hands while Zoe watched from across the table with the focused intensity of someone waiting for a show to start. I could feel the weight of everyone's attention as I peeled back the elaborate wrapping paper she'd chosen. White paper, white ribbon, like she was trying to make something pure out of what came next. The box opened to reveal a manila folder and 2 blue pens. Inside the folder, the first page was a petition for dissolution of marriage. No card, no explanation, just legal paperwork with my name spelled correctly and hers signed at the bottom in the purple ink she used for important documents. The deck went quiet except for the sound of someone's beer bottle touching the table too hard. Zoe couldn't help herself. She snorted a laugh before she could stop it, then tried to cover it with a cough. But her eyes were bright with something that looked like satisfaction, like she'd been waiting for this moment longer than anyone realized. "Now that's a present," she said, not even trying to hide her grin. "Happy birthday, Drew. Here's your parting gift." "Zoe," Melissa warned, but her sister was already committed to the performance. "What? This is perfect. I mean, who wraps divorce papers? With a bow?" Zoe's voice carried that edge of hysteria that comes when someone thinks they're winning a game everyone else has stopped playing. "You really committed to the presentation, Mel. I have to admire the dedication." "Zoe, that's enough," Melissa snapped, but the damage was already spreading like cracks in concrete. I lifted the folder, held it steady in my hands, and looked at Melissa's face. She was trying for strong and confident, but landing somewhere closer to brittle. I'd seen that exact expression through my rearview mirror in parking lots across town. "Practical," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent deck. "That's one word for it." "It's for both of us," she said, lifting her chin like she was facing down a challenge instead of delivering one. "We both know this isn't working anymore." Zoe leaned forward in her chair, practically vibrating with anticipation. "Oh, this is good. I mean, the timing is just chef's kiss perfect. Birthday surprise, divorce papers. You should trademark that move, Mel." Hudson's wife, Kelly, whispered something that sounded like, "Jesus Christ." Walt set down his beer and looked around the table like he was trying to figure out if this was real or some kind of elaborate joke. I let the silence stretch until it got uncomfortable, then turned to look directly at Zoe. "Since we're opening gifts," I said, my voice steady as a level reading, "I've got something for you too." Zoe's smirk flickered. "What, party favors? A nice casserole dish?" "Information." Her laugh came out forced. "Oh, please. What kind of information could you possibly—" I set the folder down on the table and raised my voice just enough to reach everyone on the deck. "Your husband and my wife have been meeting after hours for the past 4 months. By meeting, I mean parking in residential neighborhoods, walking into the Sunset Motel off exit 17, and leaving 90 minutes later. If you want specific dates and times, I've got 12 documented visits with photographic evidence." The smirk fell off Zoe's face like a mask hitting the floor. "What?" she breathed. Melissa exploded with the kind of quick, desperate energy that comes when your carefully laid plans detonate in your hands. "That's a lie! Drew, that's a complete lie!" I tapped the manila folder with one finger. "No, that's a file, with timestamps, and license plate numbers, and clear photos of faces." Zoe turned toward her sister, her voice dropping to something barely above a whisper. "You and Cameron, my Cameron? Don't be ridiculous, Melissa shot back. But her voice was shaking now because lies hate witnesses, and we had a whole deck full of them. Say it, Zoe demanded, standing up so fast her chair scraped against the deck boards. Look me in the face and say it. Tell me you haven't been sleeping with my husband. Melissa's mouth opened and closed, like she was trying to find words in a language she'd forgotten how to speak. There's nothing to say. You're both being dramatic. That's an answer, Zoe said, and the way she said it made it clear the conversation was over. She didn't look at me, didn't look at anyone. Just walked through our backyard gate like she was stepping off a stage into a completely different life. The rest of our guests moved in a slow, awkward procession. Kelly hugged me quick and fierce. You're going to be fine, she whispered. Walt clapped my shoulder like a teammate. Mrs. Patterson squeezed my arm and told me to call if I needed anything, her eyes wet behind her glasses. When the yard emptied, I faced Melissa alone. Go pack, I told her. Take tonight. I'll stay at a hotel. Be gone by morning. You're serious about this? Dead serious. You'll regret it. No, I won't. She tried one last angle. You don't even know the whole story. I know enough. I could explain. You had months to explain, Melissa. You chose this instead. I gestured at the white ribbon box still sitting on our table, like evidence at a crime scene. That night at the Holiday Inn, I slept like a man whose conscience finally matched his actions. In the morning, I drove home to find the house empty, except for echoes and a note on the kitchen island. I'll sign if you do. I wrote one word underneath her signature. Agreed. Within 6 months, the whole structure had been dismantled and rebuilt. Melissa transferred to Patterson and Associates' Phoenix office. Cameron faced an HR investigation for violating company policy and ended up finding work in a different industry entirely. Zoe filed her own papers and moved back in with her parents while she figured out what came next. Me? I kept the house, got the promotion Jerome had been promising, and started sleeping in the master bedroom again. Sometimes I run into Natalie at Murphy's. She designs systems for a living and has the kind of calm you can't fake. We talk about coffee and construction permits and the luxury of simple conversations. If it's a choice between my peace and someone else's chaos, I'll take the quiet every time. I learned that lesson on my birthday when someone handed me a box with my future in it, and I discovered I wasn't afraid of opening it. Some gifts turn out to be exactly what you needed, even when they come wrapped in cruelty and tied with a white ribbon that was supposed to make you bleed.